Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Birds. We are back with some Dynasty Fantasy Football with the Super Bowl wrapping up just a couple weeks ago. Let's turn our attention to 2024. No better way than our top 20 Dynasty running back rankings heading into the offseason, into 2024 Fantasy Football. Let's not waste your time, but let's hop right into these top 20 Dynasty running back rankings. This may come to a surprise to some people. I still have Benjon Robinson as my number one running back in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Yes, people were disappointed with the 2023 season he had, but still pretty amazing year for Benjon Robinson. He does split a little bit more of the work with Tyler Algier and Cordell Patterson than what you would have liked taking him in 101 in your Dynasty drafts or in the first round of your redrafts. But there's a new coaching regime. Arthur Smith, no longer the head coach. They've already released Jonnu Smith, who was eating into Kyle Pitts' workload. This new coaching staff has said that Benjon is going to be the focal point of this offense. Benjon said himself he's looking for 2,000 rushing yards, similar to what Tyreek Hill said during last offseason, and we saw how that panned out for him. Phenomenal year. So Benjon is still my number one running back in Dynasty. Number 2 and 3, I have Jahmyr Gibbs and Breece Hall. These guys are very close to my rankings, but Gibbs a year younger than Breece, so that's what moved the needle for me. Now, Breece doesn't have to deal with David Montgomery in his backfield, so maybe from a 2024 perspective, I would rather Breece Hall, but overall Dynasty, a rookie running back like Gibbs, who had a phenomenal season, especially back end of the year. In the beginning of the season, they were still working him in on a limited snap count. But at the end of the year, you could see he was getting a much higher workload. Not only that, he was also getting some goal line touches, which is what we were concerned with a guy like Gibbs, who has a slender frame right around 200 pounds. So him getting the goal line work mixed in with David Montgomery definitely has people excited about Gibbs going forward. Coming off this rookie season, I really can't put him below Breece Hall, even though Breece Hall, what he was able to do in one of the worst offenses we have seen in many, many seasons in New York. Breece still finished as a top 5 overall running back in fantasy. If he's able to do that with the offense we saw in New York last season, no telling what he's going to be able to do if Aaron Rodgers is to come back and look semi-similar to what he was during his MVP season just a few years ago. So I'm very excited about these top 3 guys. These guys are pretty much untouchable in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Wouldn't really consider moving them unless you were absolutely blown away in a trade. But let's move on to some other guys. At number 4, just one tier below, I do have Jonathan Taylor. Last season, there was some murky water situation with him in his contract. Was he going to sit? Was he injured? He does sign a 3-year extension with Indianapolis, so he's going to be the running back for the foreseeable future. He's just a couple years removed from being the overall number 1 running back in fantasy, so I don't want to act like the gap between these two tiers is very large. I think Jonathan Taylor, come next offseason, he could easily be climbing the ladder into Tier 1 rankings. I still like Jonathan Taylor. I'm not worried about a rushing quarterback in Anthony Richardson. I think that only is going to elevate Jonathan Taylor's game. We saw what Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, and others in recent memory have been able to do in Baltimore with a guy like Lamar Jackson. The running quarterback just opens up a lot of lanes for these running backs as the defense has to respect the run from the quarterback. So Jonathan Taylor, I think the upside is very high in Indianapolis, especially when you consider Richardson coming off an injury. So maybe they try to avoid some of those hits in the goal line. Taylor picking up that slack, I'm not worried about him at all. It's very hard to decide between McCaffrey or Jonathan Taylor in this number 4 spot. I gave the edge to Taylor with that new contract extension, but obviously CMC is the number 1 running back in fantasy. He is 27 years old, which is why he's in tier 2 for me. But on a win-now team, would you rather have than Christian McCaffrey right now and what he was able to do in a San Francisco 49er uniform? Healthy the entire season, which is a big thing for McCaffrey, but given the expected decline in fantasy output as you creep towards that age 28-29 season, McCaffrey's going to be in tier 2 for me, but still no worries about him. My 6th running back is Travis Etienne for the Jaguars. A little underwhelming at the end of the season during your fantasy football playoffs, but Etienne, a 25-year-old running back who gets work in the passing game with an up-and-coming offense. A guy in Trevor Lawrence who underperformed last season, but did have a number of injuries. I still love Travis Etienne in this Jaguars offense moving forward. Right after Etienne, I'm going with a couple rookies in the 2023 season, Kyon Williams and Achane for the Miami Dolphins. Kyon coming out of nowhere to overtake Cam Akers early on in the season, and when he was given this opportunity, it was full steam ahead, no looking back. He dominated in this Rams backfield, winning a number of fantasy championships as he was one of the Rams' best weapons on offense, outshining the likes of Cooper Kupp, right up there with Puka Nacua. So while there is some concern with Kyon Williams, if he's going to be able to replicate these numbers going forward, as the Rams didn't invest much draft capital into Kyron. For a guy out of Notre Dame who looks so spectacular in his rookie season, it's hard not to put him up here in the top 10 of your Dynasty running back rankings. I do have him over Achane because of the injury concerns that he provides. I mean, this is one of the knocks for Achane coming into the NFL out of Texas A&M. We didn't know how he was going to be able to hold up in the NFL, weighing in under 190 pounds. Now, he was the most efficient fantasy running back I've ever seen. When he was getting the touches in this Miami offense, he was producing, putting up insane fantasy numbers, especially against the Broncos in that early season matchup where he exploded with Raheem Mostert. With Mostert and other guys in that Miami backfield aging, maybe getting phased out of the offense, Achane has the ability to be the RB1 here if he could stay healthy. If they are willing to give him that workload like he had at the end of the season against Baltimore, that's what you want to see if you're an Achane owner. I am personally a little concerned how the weight's going to hold up. That's why I have him below Kyon Williams and ETN, but still very highly rated in this tier 3. Same tier, it's hard to rank these guys right now, Josh Jacobs and Saquon, given the fact we don't know exactly where they're going to be playing in 2024. Jacobs over Saquon, he's a year younger. But if these guys are to land on another team in a great offense, these guys could be shooting up the boards in your 2024 rankings. But still, two of the most talented running backs in the National Football League. It's hard to put them below here. Jacobs 26, Saquon 27. It's just a matter of a landing spot when it comes to these two. Number 11 off the board for me, Isaiah Pacheco. Kansas City has pretty much given him the reins in this backfield. Clyde Moore, that scat back. His role has diminished as Pacheco has emerged. If it weren't for a couple injuries later on in the season, I think we'd be talking about Pacheco in a much different light. He's clearly the guy that Andy Reid and Mahomes trust to run the football. The fan base loves him, get excited for him when he's running through tackles. In a Mahomes-led offense with some aging pieces at the tight end position in Travis Kelce, I think Pacheco and Rashad Rice are definitely two guys to profit from that. I'm pretty confident in Isaiah Pacheco. That's why he's leading my way in this tier as my RB11. Rounding out our top 12 running backs, I do have Kenneth Walker. The Seahawks showed when Walker and Charbonnet were both healthy, they wanted to lean more on Walker on first and second down, and Charbonnet was strictly in that third down role. So while the upside for Walker is limited with Charbonnet's presence, he's still a very talented running back I do want to be investing in. It's just disappointing that he does have to share that backfield with another talented running back in Charbonnet from a fantasy perspective. Next two guys at 13 and 14, I pretty much rank evenly. Rashad White and James Cook. James Cook in a better offense. Rashad White, more of a pass-catching back in Tampa Bay. The offense is better in Buffalo, but we do have to worry about Josh Allen vulturing touchdowns inside the red zone. Don't really have to worry about that in Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield, the projected starter in 2024. With White, the efficiency wasn't great, but he's giving you receptions and a number of carries. An offense that did overperform expectations coming into the season. Can they do that again? That remains to be unseen. But White was one of our favorite sleepers coming into 2023, and he definitely lived up to our expectations. So we're going to keep these two guys both in tier 4, two young running backs still on their rookie contracts. At number 15, I have Javonte Williams. It's really a matter of health. We have seen when he is healthy, he's pretty productive. He's very efficient. He breaks tackles. Now, he was coming off the ACL in 2023, but he still showed some good things in this offense. Broncos looking to move on from Russell Wilson, so we don't know exactly what that offense is going to look like. But I think a year removed from that ACL injury could prove to increase Javonte's numbers coming in 2024. I'm excited about Williams. I'm not giving up on him yet. We've seen from multiple running backs in the past with this ACL injury, year 2 is really when they hit their stride. So I'm expecting big things from Javonte. The Tennessee coaching staff is pumping up Spears as the guy coming into 2024. We've seen in some spot work for Derrick Henry. Spears is a very explosive running back. We saw that at Tulane where they went down and won the Cotton Bowl against USC. He's already proven himself to be a very effective pass catcher. If he's going to be given this work in this Tennessee offense that's probably going to look to run the ball heavily with a guy like Will Levis at quarterback, I think Tajay could provide some upside coming into year 2 with Derrick Henry leaving town. 3 guys I kind of have all very similar ranges. It's really up to you where you want to put them together, but I have David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, and Ramondre Stevenson. Montgomery, he's proven he's going to be the guy eating up carries between the 20s. Gibbs, that explosive guy in the red zone. But Montgomery's still going to have his fair share of touches inside the 5-yard line. But as Gibbs progresses throughout his career, I think he's going to evolve and become more and more of this Detroit offense, leaving Montgomery in the dust. But with such an elite offensive line and a coaching staff that wants to pound the rock as hard as Detroit does, I think he's still a fair option heading into 2024. Rounding out our top 20, I have Alvin Kamara. There are a number of guys you can insert into this slot. I consider guys like Tony Pollard, Brian Robinson, but I landed on Kamara. If you look at Kamara's numbers over his entire career, they are right up there with Christian McCaffrey. Now, a lot of his production was front-loaded alongside Drew Brees in that passing attack. Kamara's always shown the ability to have a nose for the end zone. This New Orleans offense heading into year 2 under Derek Carr, they bring over Clint Kubiak as their offensive coordinator who worked in San Francisco with Christian McCaffrey. So I'm expecting Kamara to have a pretty solid season coming into 2024. That's why I snuck him in my top 20 rankings. But clearly, it's hard to rank running backs in Dynasty. It's very subjective on where your franchise is, whether you're win now or rebuilding. But these are my top 20 running back rankings in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Let me know in the comment section what you think of this list. Drop any questions you might have. I love talking fantasy with you guys, but I appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you next time with another episode of the Fantasy Birds.